Hi, we're Shannon and Jerry Arner.
And our dog, Betty White.
Your hosts of the Arner Adventures podcast.
Could we have named it something more creative? Probably. But it's the name of our blog. It's our last name. We're on an adventure. Yada, yada, yada. After owning our own business, working 24/7.
And don't forget a mental breakdown in between.
We made a lifestyle change and decided to make the most out of life.
We sold our house, most of our belongings, downsized, and moved to the coast.
We live life minimally, but fully.
We live each day as an adventure.
This show will help you learn how to live life more fully, with more intention, by experiencing more, and with less stuff.
We'll talk about our own experiences, interview others who have much to share by creating a spark in our lives.
Some days we'll share real-life ongoings of what we're going through, and others will talk about our favorite flavor of waffle.
Come join our adventure.
It's the Arner Adventures Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Jerry.
Betty White is snug as a bug in a rug in her pita here beside us at our makeshift studio as we bring you episode number 30 of the Arner Adventures Podcast. I can hardly believe it.
The big 3-0.
It's
Where does the time go? Where does the year go? The year's flown by.
It has flown by. It's almost mid-July, summertime. People are planning their vacations. I think this is a perfect segue to get into what we're going to talk about today, which is my experience on the Holland America Alaskan cruise. But first, before we get into it, let's get to our review of the week.
Today's review comes from Amicia the Great.
Yeah, and if Amicia sounds familiar, Amicia is the one who was on our podcast a few weeks ago, and she is the one who left us a review.
Well, Amicia says, "What's not to love about this podcast? It's so upbeat and clean, just like the host. Very informative and descriptive, almost like watching with your ears."
Well, thank you so much, Amicia, first of all, for taking the time to leave us a review. I think the clean part is pretty nice. I don't know in what way she meant clean, but I'll take it however she meant it.
I'm sure she meant in an all-around way.
Yeah, I think it's as long as I don't drop any F-bombs and we keep it pretty language friendly. I don't have to put the explicit marker on the episode. Maybe that's what she meant.
That and the fact that I'm scrubbing behind my ears as I speak is probably, I think she meant it in a well-rounded way, you know.
Yeah. But either way, thank you so much, Amicia. That was just very kind of you.
When you take the time to give us a 5-star review or rating, it helps present us to others who may be interested in content like ours. And of course, keeps us motivated to keep going. We really appreciate it.
We really do. And for today's episode, like I said, I'm going to tell you about the Alaskan cruise that I recently went on with my stepdad, mainly because the things that I'm going to share just was not available as I was researching to prepare for it. And some of you have asked some questions about it. So I thought, well, let's just have a podcast and talk about it.
And I stayed home with B-Dubs. That's Betty White. That's my nickname for our dog, Betty White.
Yeah.
So you won't hear me chime in on this one.
Right. My stepdad just recently retired, and he's been wanting to go to Alaska. And so when the opportunity came up, I said, hey, let's skedaddle on over to Vancouver and go on this cruise to Alaska, as one does. And it was a bit of a retirement gift of sorts. So we went, and I'm going to tell you all about our experience.
Skedaddling is the typical way that people get across the mountainous Alaskan terrain.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I'm going to get into it and tell you all about it. Well, it is just me, Shannon, discussing this cruise. So it's a bit different than our normal pod, but that's okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to travel with Holland America on the Koningsdam ship. I think it's pronounced that way, the Koningsdam. My stepdad, Dennis, and I took this trip. The voyage, in case you're looking at cruising on an Alaskan cruise, this voyage was called the Alaskan Inside Passage, which consists of us leaving from Vancouver. You can take it either from Vancouver or Seattle. We actually flew into Vancouver, which presents a whole other ball of issues, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But this cruise, the Inside Passage, left from the Port of Vancouver, and it takes a voyage called the Scenic Cruising through the Inside Passage, which is still, the ocean, but you just have you see more land than you traditionally do on what I consider a traditional cruise, where I'm just seeing ocean on the at-sea days. We sort of ventured through, and you're seeing all these, these mountainous regions. We sort of went through and saw Tracy's Arm Forge. I don't know how to pronounce that, and then the first stop, we went all the way up north as far as we were going to go, not as far as we were going to go. We actually went to Juneau first, and then we went up as far as north as we were going to go, which was Skagway. And then we came back down through Glacier Bay, and then came back down south to Ketchikan, and then finished back at Vancouver. So just so you kind of get the idea, if you go to Holland America and look at the Inside Passage cruise, they'll show you sort of what the route is. And we'll link that down in the show notes as well. But I kind of wanted you to understand, when I say that we went on an Alaskan cruise, what exactly our Alaskan cruise was. I learned that I am definitely a warm Caribbean cruise gal. That is first and foremost. I am so glad I did this, because I've always wanted to go to Alaska, and this was really great for my stepdad, Dennis, and I. It was something that he's wanted to do, and since he just retired, it was sort of great for us to go and do that. But it was cold and rainy, and I think that for someone like me, and Jerry and I have talked about this before, it was very difficult, honestly, mentally and emotionally, when there is not a lot of other things going on. Meaning, and we're going to kind of get through this with sort of the ship, but there wasn't a lot of things that I was very interested in during the day on the ship, if we were not seeing the glaciers or seeing wildlife. So I just spent a lot of time working, which was great. I mean, I was still able to work if we did not have the days where we were at shore. So I'll kind of go through it, and I'm not downing it. I think that if you're interested in Alaskan cruise, I'm going to kind of tell you some of the things that I had a really difficult time researching, so that you hopefully will find this helpful. Because if I had to do it again, at least now I'm more prepared than I would be before. I will also tell you some things changed while we were there, as far as entering and exiting Canada and COVID stuff, which, that stuff changes day to day. So first of all, I will also link an easy sheet that I found by digging, of all of the things that you need to do if you are entering Canada, and if you're entering through Canada from America. If you're an American listening to this and you are traveling into Canada for your Alaskan cruise, I'm going to put a PDF link in the show notes that will be very easy for you to access, and it will tell you step by step what you are going to need to do. Now, that is at the time of this recording, which is July 2022. That could change, so who knows? The CDC, of course, has lifted the risk advisory for cruising, which is great. There's still a lot of safety protocols in place to protect travelers, which I totally appreciate. But there are still a lot of pre-embarkation things that you have to go through. And then Canada still has, you still have to have your vaccine to get on a cruise. You still have to have your vaccine to enter Canada. You still have to wear a mask in Canada, in public places. You, of course, need your passport to get on a cruise. You have to have your passport to get into Canada. So all of that's going to be paramount. But there's just a lot of duplication of things that was sort of a pain. But so just kind of going through pre-embarkation stuff. I'm not going to tell you bit by bit because it's going to be in that PDF, but some of the questions, that the regular questions that people ask of me and of us about cruising has been about pre-embarkation, about COVID. So COVID, with Holland America, of course, they wanted us to have our COVID vaccine, which we did. And then 72 hours prior to boarding the ship, we had to have a COVID test, and then we had to provide a negative COVID test prior to boarding the ship. That was also needed to provide to Canada in an app called ArriveCan when you are arriving into Canada. So all of that was duplicated. So all of that had to be done. The app, which is the Holland America app, which is called the Navigator app, it sort of walks you through what you have to have. You enter your passport information in there. You go through a health check 48 hours prior to your sail, asking you if you've experienced any, symptoms that align with COVID. Most of those apps do that. And then it will kind of ask you some things about, if it knows that you're coming from Canada, which it does if your sail is in there. But the ArriveCan app through Canada and that, they just, neither are very user-friendly. No one is going to hold your hand through this process. So no one is going to tell you all of the things that you have to have. I just happened to find this PDF online and was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to follow this. And it aligned perfectly. So Dennis and I streamed through everything. We had everything on our phone we needed. But the reason I'm telling you this is because the whole process is not very user-friendly, because Dennis and I were in short lines, yay for us, to board the ship, because most people did not have their apps and their items ready. They had to go through a long line. They had to sit in another area and have help through all of this stuff. So I will link it so that you are prepared. Now, this all may change, like I said, if you're booking a cruise and you're traveling later. So who knows? But I digress. The next question was about children, of course. Yes, children are allowed on this cruise. We did not see hardly any. It may be because, children are not interested in going to Alaska. It was a very adult cruise. It probably skewed a little older than me. I would say it probably skewed 50s and up. There were people my age. There were people younger than me as well, but it definitely skewed more probably retired age. But even people who are my age and younger were just very into the environmental aspect of it, very, sustainable travel, which I aligned with and I really enjoyed. So it definitely, they definitely welcome all demographics, all ages, but we just did not see a lot of children. So I'm not going to talk about the kids on this because it just really wasn't an issue. As far as hand sanitizer stations, all of that, same thing as the other cruises. They were outside of all the elevators, doorways, bars, almost everywhere. We heard that the staff were tested regularly, but Holland was not as transparent regarding their COVID testing and numbers the way that the other cruise lines have been.
Let's tell our listeners what has become one of our favorite pastimes.
I'd love to.
Riding our Schwinn electric bikes to watch the sunset each evening.
Yeah, watching the sunset is not new to us. We started toasting the sunset during the COVID lockdown, which many of you know. But a new spin is, yes, getting our Schwinn e-bikes out and riding to watch the sunset over the ocean.
And we can do that because our Schwinn e-bikes have integrated LED lights, so the ride back home is safe.
The lights are really cool, too. They have a modern look while helping others to see us. Our Schwinn e-bikes have head and tail lights and this really cool bar light down the middle, so we're even seen on the sides.
I'm all about safety.
something you and Schwinn have in common. Ride safely and in style. That's their motto, you know.
Our Schwinn e-bikes are really fun, too. We're coming up with all kinds of reasons to ride, and because they're so much more eco-friendly than our cars and less expensive to maintain. Hello, rising gas prices. We use them to get all around town.
Yeah, and they're super easy. If you want to pedal, you pedal. If we want to just chill and just ride, that's what we do because we use the Schwinn throttle and glide.
That's what we love about it.
To get yours and have tons of adventures of your own, we have a link for you to shop in the show notes. Use code ARNER150 to save $150 at schwinnbikes.com now through July 12th. That code is valid for the Schwinn models we have, the Koningsdam DX, as well as the Koningsdam CE models.
They're the coolest ones anyway.
True.
Be sure to tag us and Schwinn in your new favorite pastimes.
While we were on the ship, so once when Dennis and I were walking around, we did see that a couple of hallways were closed off where people were staying in their staterooms. And the sign just said that it had been blocked off, quarantined. So we know that COVID was around the ship, which is, it's nothing to be scared of. It's pretty par for the course these days. Anywhere you go, that's just, you know, people get COVID, and on a cruise ship, it's going to happen. It's very safe. You know, you're still on the ship. You just stay in your stateroom, and they just take care of you in your stateroom, and you know, they quarantine that area off. So that's the only reason we knew it was getting around the ship a little bit, but no, I shouldn't say getting around the ship. We knew that COVID was on the ship just because of that, but they did not talk to us about COVID. They did encourage us to wear our masks, but it was not mandatory. They did ask us to wear our masks getting on and off the ship, even though Alaska did not require you to wear a mask, which was sort of odd. So we still don't really understand it. We put our mask on to sort of, you know, use our pass to get off the ship, and then we took it right off, and then we put it on to get on the ship, and then we took it right off. So we don't really understand why that was. And then they would even ask you to take your mask down so that you could show your face, that it aligned with the photo in their system. So I don't know. Anyway, but we did not have to wear our mask on the ship. Some people did, but most people did not. Okay, so let's talk about restaurants, which is the fun part. Dennis and I ate in the main dining room each night. We did have a set time for us that they asked us what time we wanted to eat. We had the same table every night. You know, I have my tree nut allergy. They took care of me in a really great way. It was very well taken care of. It was taken very seriously, which I really love. My food was really great. It was, you know, I don't eat meat either, so it was top-notch vegetarian cuisine. It was wonderful. Dennis eats meat and seafood, and he was stepping out of his box and eating all different kinds of food he never eats. It was really great. We'll have video footage of all of this stuff on our YouTube channel. Holland America has the Holland America Line Culinary Council, which brings global influence and expertise to dining venues across their entire fleet. And so all of their chefs are trained, you know, with a global influence. Their executive chef on board is highly trained. And so you can really notice it in the dining. It was just really, really great. They have 4 specialty restaurants. If you recall the other 2 podcasts that we did about Virgin and about Celebrity, that seems to be sort of the new thing post-COVID, are these specialty restaurants where, you know, when you pay for a cruise, your dining is included. But these specialty restaurants sort of takes it up a notch, kind of gets you out of your traditional dining experience. And so what this is you do pay an additional expense if you decide you want to go to one of these specialty restaurants. We highly encourage, if you can even do it once, to do it, where it just gets you out of that main dining room. We went to one of the 4 called Canaletto. It was an Italian restaurant. It was phenomenal. we really, really enjoyed it. They range, the specialty restaurants range from about $25 to $50 per person. From a logistics standpoint, if you're still interested in those buffets and the Lido deck type feel, they still have that, though the buffets are not the traditional buffets. Thank God. You're not going up and like serving yourself. I would be completely grossed out. I was completely grossed out pre-COVID, but post-COVID, they do not have the buffets that you go up and you're serving yourself and putting your hands on the food. They have it where you come up and then you do come up and stand there and they serve you. You tell them what you want, they put it on your plate, and then you walk away. So a little bit of that buffet feel, the way that most Lido decks have. So if you're into that, they still have it. So you don't have to go to the dining room. They have the Lido deck open, I think, from like 6:30 or 7 a.m. to, I don't know, midnight or something. And I think they have pizza all the time. So if that's your thing, they still have it. They also have, we had breakfast and coffee delivered to our room. They still have room service, all of that. I love having coffee on the veranda, the balcony, sitting on the deck, even when it's cold. I just love having coffee in my stateroom. I just need my mornings. I need that whole thing. And so what was really nice is the days we were, we were sailing by the glaciers. It was really nice to sit out there with my coffee, with a blanket, just kind of watching, the water and hopefully seeing wildlife, which I did. I saw little seals, and I don't know how little they were. They look little to me, but they're probably not. They have a coffee shop and a library on the ship, which is sort of fitting the theme of like a colder climate. It was cozy. They have what's called the Grand Dutch Cafe. So I would go there and have a latte or a warm coffee drink and set up my laptop and work. And there would be a great view of the water and the mountain region as we sort of sailed by. If you're on the Koningsdam, I highly encourage you to go to the Grand Dutch Cafe, ask for Emma, and ask for the Emma special. I don't even know what exactly is in it. You can see it on my Instagram. It is absolutely wonderful. And who cares what time it is? Even if it's 8 a.m, it's this coffee drink. It has Bailey's in it. I don't know what it is, but it is heaven in a cup. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's great. Just go and ask for the Emma special. Some people would be playing chess. Some people would be reading a book. It's just sort of a cozy ship feel. It's just very different during the day if you're accustomed to a cruise ship. It's just very different than what I am used to on a cruise ship. They had lots of entertainment. Like this cruise ship was music themed. So in the I don't even want to say late afternoon. In the early evening and nights, there was live music. There were 3 live music club bars on the ship. One was called Billboard Onboard. One was called Rolling Stone Rock Club. And one was called the B.B. King Blues Club. They were all really cool, had really great live music. But my whole thing is, and I can't figure this out, is there just wasn't anything going on during the day. Like if you can't sit out by a pool and sort of lounge in the sun and have your cocktails or do pool stuff, there just wasn't anything else to do. And you can't do the pool stuff unless you're going to hang out in the heated pool, which, is fine. But there just wasn't, I didn't think there was enough to do on the ship if you're not working. And most people don't go on their cruises working. And I did. So I was working. I will tell you sort of another con, like, pros and cons here, but another con is that I paid for the Wi-Fi service and it wasn't very good. So I didn't get great work done. I mean, I got a lot of work done, but I didn't get great work done. So then there was that issue too. And when I would go and talk to like the client services desk about it, they were kind of like, oh yeah, that's just how it is here. in the inside passage. And I was like, well, why are we paying for the Wi-Fi package if it's not that great? But okay, I'm not going to keep poo-pooing on this because it it really was beautiful, and I'm going to tell you about some of the really, really great things that were, phenomenal, and you can't get anywhere else. I will tell you some other ship things that were really great. Some of the evenings in the middle of the ship, they had where the pool was open, and it had this big dome that closed over it. And this huge movie screen would come out, and they would do like theater night, and you could sit in these lush sort of lounge chairs, and they would have theater type food, popcorn, candies, nachos and stuff like that. And that was really cool. I mean, that was an experience I've never seen on a ship. Something different on this ship as well. Of course, the music theme, there was live music going on all the time in the early evening and at night, which I absolutely loved. They also had great live shows. So if you went into the the theater, I can't remember what it was called, but it was sort of like, how a lot of ships have like the Broadway musical type thing. They would have like these live performances, like dance performances, and those were really good. We went to see a couple of those. Something different about Holland that differs from Celebrity and Virgin is that the tips were not included in the fare. So we did opt to have it where it comes out every day of our charge account. So it's not like one big lump sum. It doesn't really matter. You're paying for it either way. But we did have it where they took it out, like they spread it out each day. But just know that when you're booking it, that's something we talked about with the other two cruises, is that the tips were just sort of already taken care of. So when you booked your cruise, the tips were done. But with Holland America, as of right now, it's not done. So when you get on your cruise, you still have to take care of your tips. I did go to the spa and had a lovely massage. The spa was wonderful. They do book up fast, so I encourage you to book up your services early. The tip was automatically added, and then you can opt to add more if you'd like. Like when you're signing your slip, you can just, add more if you want, but there is a tip that's automatically added, just FYI. Okay, something that is completely wonderful, cannot be surpassed, are the shore excursions. Now, I've never been on another Alaskan cruise. I don't know if others offer this, but I'm going to tell you what we did. That was just absolutely amazing. In Juneau, we went whale watching, and the tour guide was called Gastineau Guides, and it was so great. The whale watching it was cold and rainy, but so what? We were seeing whales, for God's sake. It was just amazing. It was bucket list. It was as amazing as you would imagine it would be if you've never seen whales. We see dolphins here in Beaufort, and that never gets old. But seeing whales, it was just amazing. I don't know if I've said amazing enough. Our guide was very knowledgeable about whales. She had traveled sort of the world studying whales. So it's not like our guide was just some guide who is paid part-time to kind of take us around and, maybe knows a little bit. She knew a lot about whales. So she was able to teach us things about it and tell us how to protect them. And they weren't going to get more than, I think it was like, I don't remember if it was 100 yards away from them. And we weren't going to go chasing them around on the boat. We were just waiting to see more as we moved along. And it was just really, really educational as well. We also took a hike through the Tongass National Park in Juneau, which then led us through a trail that opened up to the Mendenhall Glacier, which, oh my gosh, was breathtaking. It was absolutely breathtaking. Being outside, there are so many benefits to being outdoors.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. There are mental and physical benefits.
With our Schwinn electric bikes, I feel like we're outside all the time. We're just looking for excuses to be outside.
Yeah, right. Vitamin D, feeling the wind blow against your skin. And there's a bit of a thrill with the speed factor with the Schwinn e-bikes.
Oh gosh, I know. Those babies go up to 20 miles per hour. It's exhilarating. That's a strong battery.
Well, yeah, and if you want to pedal, you can pedal too. It's a win-win, folks.
It's also a great way to meet people because everyone wants to talk about our sleek Schwinn e-bikes when we're riding them around town.
They're knocking on our door right now. And if you don't want to meet people, you can just push the Schwinn throttle and zoom away.
Well, if you want your own outdoor adventure with Schwinn, use code ARNER150 to save $150 on your own e-bike at schwinnbikes.com now until July 12th. We'll link all of it for you in the show notes.
That code is valid for the Schwinn models that we have, the Kosten DX and the Schwinn Kosten CE, which are the coolest ones anyway.
That's right. Don't forget code ARNER150 from now until July 12th. The Mendenhall Glacier, and we learned a lot about it too, and why the whales come to Juneau is mainly because of the glacier and the nutrients they get from it, and it was just beautiful. I'll link a video of that down in the show notes as well. Then when we got to Skagway, we took a tour of the town. You can do it literally in an hour. It's the tiniest little town ever, with a group called the Good Time Girls. And these girls are aligned with the Red Onion Saloon, and they're of course actresses, but they're dressed up in the attire of what the women would have wore during the days of the gold rush. And they are women who would have been prostitutes. So women during that time resorted a lot to prostitution because they didn't have any other way to make money while their husbands were going to look for gold. So they just taught us a lot about Skagway and how it was a stop for people before, they went to the line to go look for gold. And so the town has kind of a dark history, and it was really interesting. And it's like you've sort of stepped back 100 years or so when you get there, and it's sort of stopped in time. And the Red Onion Saloon is really cool, and it's a really neat place. And so I highly encourage you, if you've got the chance, at least get off. I think a lot of times people think, oh, that's a little town, I'm not even going to get off the ship. But definitely get off of the ship and walk around the town, because there's these little nooks and crannies and little coffee shop and bakeries and sandwich shops. And, these people there's real people in these towns, and they have these stores and shops, and really count on these ships to come in. But not only that, it's really neat because you get to meet these people who have these wonderful stories. We met the people who own a sandwich shop there, and these two guys, and they moved there, and they came to visit, and they just ended up staying and ended up, loving the town, and sort of came and then opened up a sandwich shop. So you never know who you're going to meet, and you don't meet people and have these conversations and just anywhere. So I highly encourage you, get off of the ship. When I hear someone say, "Oh yeah, we just stayed on the ship today," I'm just like, how many times are you going to be in Skagway, Alaska? You're probably never again. So you definitely should get off of the ship and experience it. Okay. So the next place we went was Ketchikan. And during this, I forgot to mention that we did go through Glacier Bay, which I should definitely talk about. Glacier Bay, they brought that the day that we were going through Glacier Bay, it literally is an entire day of seeing glaciers in the water on the mountain region. And they bring on a forest ranger from the national forest there, the national park, and they are telling you on like the overhead speaker all day about Glacier Bay. So you get to see more whales in the water, which we did. we get to see seals, otters. You get to see so much wildlife, and it's just that was a really great day. That was the day I had the Emma special and sat in front of the window and worked and just kind of vegged out and just watched the glaciers go by. And it was just so peaceful and nice and lovely. So Ketchikan was the last stop, and it was so adventurous and fun. Dennis and I rode ATVs through the rainforest. It was raining, it was muddy, but it was wonderful. And we rode up through the rainforest. When we got to the top, we got out and we hiked a little bit and saw this waterfall and learned so much about Ketchikan. And our guide is from Ketchikan, and we, just learned so much. I'm going to have a whole blog about it. It was great. And, I spent the kind of day walking through the town, and then came back and, sailed back down. But it was the best part of the whole trip was learning about these towns, and then learning about just Alaska and people how they survive and how they what they do to survive. And there's all these little stories, like the kids in Ketchikan, when they're in elementary school through middle school, all they're doing is learning. Well, not all they're doing, but one of the things that they're doing a lot of is learning about survival skills. So they're learning, how to start fires, and what do you do to recognize berries that are safe and berries that are dangerous, and leaves and trees. And they're learning all of these things. And then when they get, I can't remember if it's early high school. I can't remember exactly when, but they're still kind of young. They drop them off. They don't tell their parents or anything, but they drop them off in the middle of the forest for a weekend, and they have to survive. They have to do it for a weekend. Their parents don't know where they are. They're allowed to take this little canister of whatever they can fit into it and get through the weekend. And they do it because they've been taught this whole time how to do it. And when we were asking the guide, well, gosh, why do you guys have to do that? Is that something you really need to know? And he's like, yeah, they have this times where the ocean around there gets some kind of chemical in, I don't remember what he called it, but something in it where you're not supposed to eat the fish out of it. And I'm like, how would we even know that? We wouldn't know that. We would just be fishing and eating the fish. If you eat fish. So there's just all these little things that one would not know unless you were living in Alaska and were taught all of these things. And it's another thing to tell you that when you travel, you learn about other cultures. And though Alaska and the weather and all of the kind of dreariness of what it was and sort of how it affects me mentally, I couldn't live somewhere where it was raining all the time. I still learned so much about other people's culture, and it opens you up to so much when you travel. You learn so much about other people. And, I just think that if you don't learn about other people and you're not learning about other cultures and other people's experiences, you just stay so close-minded. So, it's a bucket list thing. Check it off. Great. I did it. I loved it. And now I'm good. I'm a Caribbean warm weather gal. So some other questions I received really quickly is about, is it dark all the time? I actually did a video from the ship, and because of the Wi-Fi, it did not come through. So I'm just going to tell you that it was light most of the time when we were there. I never saw darkness, never, meaning night darkness, until one time when I woke up at about, I think it was 3 in the morning. No, 2. I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning. And I opened up the window shade thingies that were like blackout shades, and I finally saw darkness. And I was like, oh, okay. So it does get dark, but it's light at 4 a.m. and it's light at midnight, at least during the time that we were there in June. So It was not dark all the time we were there. It was light all the time. Packing, oh my God. I'm going to link the blog post about it down below. Every packing website I found was telling me to pack everything in the kitchen sink. Do not do that. Do not do that. Yes, the weather changes. There was a day where I had a beanie on, a full-on, like, layered up. That's how you do it. You layer a coat, gloves, and then that afternoon, not kidding you, I took a picture in my bathing suit with snow-capped mountains in the background. It's on Instagram. The weather changes all the time, yes, but do not take everything. Just take layers and take a few different kinds of things. I still packed everything in a carry-on like I do because I'm not checking my luggage. I did not check my luggage for this trip. I'm not going to. And I still took my coat. I took my raincoat. You have to learn how to pack well. Download our packing prep list. We'll put it in the show notes. But you don't need to pack everything. These packing lists I was finding had me scared out of my mind thinking I needed everything. But I did a blog post about it, about what I would do differently with packing and what I think that I was so glad that I did, what I think that you should know. So I'll link that down below. The weather, like I said, did change a lot. It was mostly cold and rainy though. So be prepared for that. You're going to have rain. Period. Be prepared. When we were doing all of that pre-embarkation, ArriveCan, Verify, all this stuff, the checklist, the PDF that I told you I'm going to link in the show notes. One of the things that we originally had to do prior to coming back into the United States was find a testing site to test so that we could test negative for COVID prior to coming back. Well, Holland, up until right before we went on our cruise, used to do that for you. Well, they stopped doing it. So we had to, while we were on the ship, try to find a place where we could test. So we were sort of stressed out about that. We didn't have great Wi-Fi. We were trying to look at our shore excursions. Oh, do they have a testing site? Like as we came closer to Vancouver, because you have to do it. I can't remember if it was 48 hours or 72 hours prior to coming back into the United States. Right before we got back into Vancouver, Biden announced that you no longer, as of that Sunday at midnight, you no longer had to test for COVID, like test negative for COVID prior to coming back into the United States. We were flying back into the U.S. Sunday morning at like 5 or 6 a.m. So we missed it by a few hours of not having to test. So we were like, whew, okay. We no longer have to spend our time trying to find a testing site in a country where we don't know where the testing site is. I mean, granted, it's Canada. It's not like it's a completely foreign country, but they don't have CVS or Walgreens. We couldn't find anything like that. So we were having trouble already. So it was something that did change while we were on the ship. The reason I bring that up is because these COVID protocols are changing daily. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're hearing me say, oh yeah, this is the way it is, this is what we have to do, this is how Holland does it, it could very well change the next day. So just be sure that you check whatever the COVID protocols are prior to embarking. And then even while you're on the ship, prior to disembarking, everything could change. I think that's kind of it. If you have, direct questions about it, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. I tried to address all the questions that were coming in through DMs or emails or texts or anything while I was there, or anything that's come in since. But, if you're planning a trip to Alaska, or a cruise to Alaska anyway, I hope that I answered some of the questions or addressed them, and at least about the Koningsdam. And if I didn't, then, like I said, let me know. As always, you can find us at arneradventures.com, on Instagram at arneradventures, also linked in the show notes.
So until next time, enjoy the journey that you're on. We're wishing you lots of adventures.
Bye.